I'm Matt McGrath, and you're listening to the True North Country Comic Podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's May 24th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards the betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with Matt McGrath at TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Matt is a writer and marketing professional who lives in Toronto. He currently works as a content writer specializing in educational marketing. He's also the co-founder of the Toronto theater production company Bygone Theatre. Matt's short comics have appeared in Gothic Tales of Haunted Futures for Renegade Arts Entertainment, Strange Romance Volume 3, A Soul Divided, Caged in Flesh for Red Stilo Media, and Called Into Being. He recently released his first self-published comic, ID10T Error, and successfully funded it on Kickstarter. And so without further ado, here's my chat with Matt McGrath at TCAF 2021. Matt McGrath, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You've been doing some exhibiting at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, so I want to ask you some questions about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So with conventions and festivals, you know, we've been to a few. I'm wondering if you have any favorite moments that you like to share.
Sure. Just I don't know. I when I go to conventions, I'm very business-like, especially things like Fan Expo. I don't have any really standout moments. I think just the bin diving is what I miss the most.
Okay.
I've got my whole list of things that I want to get, my collections. I don't know. I think one of the most memorable or kind of accomplished I've ever felt was when I maybe 10 years ago or something, when I went to Fan Expo and I collected all of Jeff John's Green Lantern run up to that point. Yeah. And I had to go from place to place. I'd find an odd issue here, an odd issue there, and and just over the course, I started off with zero, and by the end I had everything I needed to go. So that's one of the experiences I really miss.
Yeah, there's some satisfaction when you get a complete run. Exactly, that's for sure. Yeah. The trouble now, of course, is that they're variant covers for a lot of these, and it's almost impossible to get every variant cover for every issue because you'd break the bank for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm not really interested in the variant cover stuff. I just need the one issue just to
get it done for sure. There you go.
So we're talking one, I'm happy.
Yeah. So we're here talking about TCAF, and I want to talk a bit about the book that you were exhibiting there called Idiot Error. And I know we chatted about the book last year, but I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about it for those not familiar with the title, and maybe the origins of the book as well.
Sure. It goes by two names, kind of. I call it ID10T Error, or Idiot Error, as it's, the kind of visual joke of it is. So last time we talked, I was kickstarting it, and it was funded successfully, thankfully. And it's been finished pretty recently. We only finished it kind of mid-March. Luckily, it was a digital book, so we could send it out to backers right away. So it's been out there for a while. And I've lost track of your question. So what's the book about?
What is it all about? What would you say to someone if they were looking at your table and said, "Gosh, what's this all about?"
Right. The kind of high elevator pitch I like to give that kind of draws people's attention is it's very Black Mirror-esque type story. It's got horror, sci-fi, and a bit of comedy in it as well. So it's basically you're introduced to a man who has this robot in his basement, and we find out that he created this robot just for the sole purpose of torturing and destroying it. So we're kind of following the story of the robot, kind of grappling with what it is, and also just, attending to its very primal instincts of survival. So yeah, it's just the kind of a cat and mouse type tale of the robot trying to escape, the creator catching it, restraining it again, and the kind of power struggle between the two. Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. And then it's got kind of a few twists and turns in there as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's very intriguing, that's for sure. Wondering what inspired you to create this story, though. Was there anything behind it?
A little bit, yeah. So the inspiration might be a bit of a spoiler.
Okay, well, let's not spoil anything. No.
Yeah.
But it certainly sounds almost like Twilight Zone. You mentioned Black Mirror, something along those lines. I guess is what something clicked and said, this could work.
Yeah. It's just like I guess, very broadly speaking, the frustrations we all have with technology, and that how we're able to vent those frustrations.
Yeah, that happens on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. And this one dude takes it to the most insane extreme.
Okay. Very good. Now, you mentioned how you did this book through Kickstarter, and I wonder what tips you would give to others who want to make their own comic book using that facility of Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I think the best tip that I could probably give is to kind of, really network with other creators out there, especially through, Twitter is where I'm mainly at, but, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, whatever social media channels that you have access to. Just be very vocal with other people's stuff, like back other people's stuff, or even if you can't back it, if you don't have the funds, retweet it, help to share it, and spread the word about it, and just, create contacts that way. I think that's probably the biggest thing that helped me, especially in the first couple of days.
Having a strong network, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like people of stuff that I backed, and I just paid attention to them and liked their comments, and just kind of created conversations with them. They were like the first people to back the project. So yeah, I think that's the biggest help. And if you got friends, family, also hit them up. Don't be bashful about it. They're typically they want to help you out too, and they're probably going to be your biggest supporters as well.
That's good advice. Yeah, would you use it again? Do you think Kickstarter was successful enough for you that you go back to it again?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to. Like, I have an idea for doing more Kickstarters. For this Kickstarter, I started really small as my very first Kickstarter, so I really wanted to play it safe. I'm a very risk-adverse person, naturally. So I had like not very small, but a pretty small goal, very achievable. I didn't print the book, so, I didn't have to worry about, I don't know, I've never printed a book before, so I didn't have to worry about having to figure that out in the middle of a Kickstarter. So yeah, once the book was finished, I could send it out to backers right away. I definitely want to do it again and kind of take some more baby steps, like make a higher goal, maybe definitely want to do a print book next, and take it away from there.
Sure, makes sense. Yeah. So stepping back a little bit more, for a broader question, let's say someone came up to your table at TCAF and asked you, what advice would you give to someone who wants to make their own comic book?
I think a lot of the advice that I've heard that always makes sense. The most sense to me is to start small, especially now with Twitter and all these other social media channels, Kickstarter, things like that. There's so many opportunities for anthologies. So yeah, I'd say keep an eye out for anthologies and open calls, and they're definitely a bunch geared to people who are beginner starters, I think that's like the best way to kind of, hone your skills for storytelling, to kind of tell stories in these small nuggets, for very brief beginning, middle, end, and, limited story beats. So it's not, you don't get caught under the weight of your own ideas and twists and turns. And yeah, it's helpful. You don't have to worry about, the printing, all the technical aspects. You can just kind of have your training wheels on, focusing on the story and working with an artist. And then, once you kind of have a better handle of that, you can work your way up to doing your own stuff, self-publishing it. So yeah, definitely anthologies. That's how I got my start. And yeah, I think I'm glad I started with short stories instead of, my magnum opus.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
That's good advice. That's for sure. Yeah. So you've got this book done. It's finished. I'm wondering if you could talk about what's next for you. Any big projects down the road that you can talk about?
Yeah, I got a small project. Speaking of anthologies, I'm going to be in another anthology. It just funded successfully on Kickstarter last week. So that was really cool. It's called Off Into the Sunset. And it's an anthology inspired by Westerns. Mm-hmm. So not necessarily Westerns as we understand them, the typical ones, but stories inspired by them. So sci-fi Westerns, horror Westerns, fantasy Westerns, what have you. And yeah, I'm doing a story with a Toronto artist called Fellhound. And we're doing a short 3-page story about Toronto's first hanging.
Oh my! Wow.
Yeah. It's a very grimly funny story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And a very,
something to look forward to. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So where do you, well, here's the other question I have for you. I mean, certainly at conventions and festivals, it's about networking and talking to people, meeting with people. It's also about buying books. Mm-hmm. Where do you recommend people go to purchase your books?
Good question. Right now, it's digital, so you only get it through Gumroad. So yeah, if you go to my Twitter, you can find it there. So my Twitter is @stupidmatt, with stupid is spelled STOOPID. PID, yeah. Yeah, so it's on my Gumroad and it's easily available there.
Very good. Very good. Well, Matt, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
Yeah, I guess I could just briefly talk about other big projects. It's not, concrete right now, but I'm working on the sequel to ID10T Error, which I'm pretty excited about. So yeah, it's kind of, originally I thought the first story was just going to be a standalone story. But yeah, I guess when I was running the Kickstarter, I kind of had more ideas for where the story could go. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. So yeah, I'm working on the script right now. The original artist, Ottavio Colino, he's gearing up to do it. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll be launching another Kickstarter for that. And like I said, yeah, I'd really love to print it. So the Kickstarter will be a funding for the production of book 2, and it'll also fund the printing costs for book 1. So it'll kind of, yeah, both will be in there.
Thanks to Matt for the chat. You can discover more about Matt on Twitter at STOOPID_MATT and on Kickstarter.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.